My first trip to the orphanage in Bangladesh was when I was a sophomore in high school. So I went with my dad and a few of my cousins and my aunt and uncle. We were all teenagers at the time. I was your typical high school student. You know, I loved the mall. I loved clothes. I loved sports. I loved hanging out with my friends. I was a teenage girl growing up in America. To say my world was changed would probably be an understatement. Back in 2013, my husband and I had just had our second daughter. So we had two babies at home under 18 months. And in talking to some family members, I just mentioned how much I wanted to be at home with my girls, but still wanted to work and still had a passion for nonprofit fundraising. So just lo and behold, a few weeks later, David Halder, the executive director of Help Bangladesh, reached out and was struggling with his current sponsorship agency. So he had donors that were sending $40 a month to sponsor children, but he was only receiving $26 a month. So in that, the Speak of family decided to create a foundation. Thus was the birth of International Promise Foundation. In return, as far as my personal life, it allowed me the opportunity to stay at home and still work. So I got to raise my children, but I also got to, in return, take care of 450 children in Bangladesh. International Promise Foundation, or IPF, was formed in 2013, and we are a nonprofit organization. Our mission is right out of James 1:27, to help care for the orphans and widows. So we feel that God has called us to really live out His heart for orphans and widows throughout the world. So Bangladesh is where our heart lies right now with this home that we found there. First, we take children who are orphans. Next is single parent homes, and then the poorest of the poor. So on average, we're taking between 20 and 50 new children every year into the home. And then we also have children who graduate from the programs. Our whole premise would be that we're family oriented and IPF would be 100% underwritten. So when our donors give $40 a month to sponsor a child, all $40 sent to ours. On that first trip, I met a young boy who was 5 at the time. His name was Moshi, and I loved him so much that I remember calling my mom when we got to Thailand and saying, I found this boy and he's so great and he's so wonderful. And she said, she recalls me going on for 10 minutes about him when finally she said, can you put your dad back on the phone? And when my dad picked up, she said, do I need to be getting a room ready? Because it sounds like this little boy is coming home with you. But so returning to the States, I was 14 years old. I said, I want to sponsor him. And at the time it was $300 a year, and my parents said, okay, and that's on you. So my commitment as a 14-year-old child was to babysit or to help out as much as I could at home or do whatever I had to do to make that $300 so that I could support him. So over the years, I made a couple visits and got to see him grow up. We always wrote letters. I remember writing to him when Jake and I got married and when we had Stella and sharing our big life moments together. And it was my last trip, one of my second to last trip there. He was 17, so he spoke fluent English. And when I went to leave, it was really early in the morning. I went to walk down the stairs and he waited up for me. And before I left, he gave me the biggest hug and he said, thank you for sponsoring me, you've changed my life. And it was in that moment that I think I melted as a person, but I came home and said to my husband, you know, it's been 13 years, and to think of $300 over 13 years, that it changed his life and that he wouldn't live in poverty and that he knew Jesus and that he had an education, to know that someday he'll be married and he'll have a family and they won't ever have to live the way that he lived as a young child because he's now able to provide for them, and to show the love of Christ in a country that never gets to see his face, I think is amazing for us. I think the wonderful thing about IPF right now is that there's no age limit, there's no name, or there's no face that fits with our sponsorship program. But I think the ones that pull at my heart the most are the families with young children who are implementing the program in their homes. When we formed this foundation, we thought that we were finding families here in the States who could sponsor children. What I don't think I ever saw coming was the effect that it's having on a generation here in the States. There's no greater gift that you can give a child than to show them love. And this program is based around that sole fact, is you're gonna show them love, you're gonna show them compassion, and you're doing it because Christ loves you, and you show that to them through child sponsorship.